Hi, I'm George, the Weather Dad, and on today's Weather Classroom, we're again going to talk about leaves. Not about these leaves. We have already covered why they are changing colors and falling off the trees and giving us that beautiful fall color from coast to coast. We're actually going to be talking about these leaves. Allison asked me the other day, why are evergreens always evergreen? Well, these are actually leaves. These evergreens have evolved over time and they live in relatively harsh conditions. And what happens here is their leaves now wrapped up very tight and they actually have a little bit of a waxy feel to them so they can grow in harsher conditions and keep the photosynthesis process going, and also to help conserve water so they can in fact live in some of these conditions. Now, of course, do they also lose their needles or leaves? And the answer is yes. It depends on the type of tree we're talking about, but they generally start turning brown, at least some of the needles, sometime late summer, and that could progress right on through the fall season. Some actually brown out their needles throughout the entire year, so it really depends on what type of pine tree that we're actually discussing here. Of course, there's a lot of different pines that we do have across the country, but the most popular is the ponderosa pine, and that's because, well, they grow out in the Rockies and Appalachians and they're just about everywhere. But when it comes to landscaping, the pine tree of choice, the Australian pine, that's because it's relatively fast growing and they're fairly dense because they have some fairly large needles. Now, that's a pine. What about this guy, a blue spruce? So have you ever wondered what's the difference between a pine, a spruce, and a fir? Well, here you go. The pine, as you can see here, the node has multiple needles coming out of one central spot and are fairly long, and that's a pine tree. The blue spruce, well, those needles are a little bit square and you can actually roll them in your fingers. When you can do that, it's now considered a spruce. Now the fir, well, those needles are more flat and you can't really roll them. So if you don't know what you have in your yard, we'll go out and take a look at the needles. Now, of course, we're heading out into the Christmas season, and some of you may want to consider cutting down your own Christmas tree or buying a fresh tree. Over the next several weeks, I'll be talking more about the care of a Christmas tree if you decide to purchase a fresh cut tree. That's today's Weather Classroom. I'm George, the Weather Dad.